as can be. And I just want to talk to you a little bit today about mind power. Your mind power. How powerful is your mind? I think it would be safe to say that a lot of us believe that our minds are infinitely powerful, and rightfully so. I mean that pretty much. I believe that's a very accurate thing to say, a very truthful thing to say. But what's really, really interesting about the whole scenario, we think that our minds are infinitely powerful. But for a lot of us, the whole process of manifest, manifesting a life that can prove our minds are infinitely powerful, that's another matter altogether. I mean, we need proof that our minds are infinitely powerful, but for whatever reason, we can't seem to shake off the fog of confusion and other negative mental states, such as anxiety, such as fear, which is anxiety is an offspring, hostility, those kind of things. I mean, shoot, depression. I mean, if our minds are so infinitely powerful, we should be able to do better mentally. You know, if our minds were so great and powerful, if our minds are so great and powerful, not so many of us should technically be mentally ill. I mean, you may have heard the philosophy, and a lot of psychologists will agree when they say that the mind, we only use anywhere from 5 to 10% of our mental power. The other 90 to 95%, all that other part of mind power, that if we had total access to it, we'd be able to prove that we were infinitely powerful. If we had all that, lives would be different. This world would be different. But why do we only use that little amount of our mind power? I mean, that really doesn't make sense. If you have your total mind, which is infinite, why only 5 to 10%? I'm going to take a little crack at it, what I think, why that is. And I'm working on releasing more of my mental power so I can use it to manifest a better life for myself. It's a process, but I believe it can be done. But here's the thing. I think we don't use 90 to 95% of our mind's powers because that 90 to 95% is pretty much squandered on egotism. Yeah, we use that much mind power to manifest within our inner being an imaginary version of ourselves. And it takes that much mind power to fortify and keep an ego alive within the mind. But what is an ego? Well, I don't mean to make it sound too simple, but an ego is a self-concept, right? You have a concept of yourself, an idea of who you are and what you are. And so that idea that concept of yourself, you believe in that concept. To believe in something is to be and to live within that something. That's, the word believe is really like a compound word, which means be and live. So it means to be and to live in that concept. So basically, when you believe in that concept of yourself, that self concept, what you're doing is infusing consciousness into the concept. Like if you think about it, this is the way God creates angels. Like God may say, let there be a cloud in the sky. And so in his greater cosmic level of mind, he thinks of the idea of a cloud. He pictures it with his imagination, and he infuses a portion of his consciousness into that idea of the cloud and releases it. And the thought energy, the energy of consciousness, once it gets infused in the idea, it becomes a seed which germinates into what a cloud is, into the realm of physicality. Likewise, God may say, I want justice, the universe to be operated by fairness and justice. And he has an idea of what that is. And bingo, that concept, his conscious energy is infused in that concept. And we have what a lot of people know as the Archangel Michael, who dispenses with justice and, handles karma. Depending on if you subscribe to a religion, you might call it something else. But I was raised in Christianity, that's why I use that example. So the ego is an unconscious spiritual version of yourself that you created. And it takes that much of your spiritual energy, that much of your consciousness to support it. 90 to 95%. This is why people are unconscious, because the greater portion of their spirit is unconscious, because it's infused into this idea of themselves, this self-concept that we call an ego. And it's a whole lot of dead weight. I mean, it's unconscious. It lives in darkness. So the ego is a shadow self, and it weighs heavy upon us. No wonder so many people are so downtrodden, depressed, and mentally ill, even sickly, because all that light could be used to fortify the body as opposed to supporting an ego. So in my personal amateur opinion, I say amateur, I've been studying spirituality and psychology for quite some time now. I mean, it's been well over 2 decades. I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going on, spiritually speaking, mentally also, because I believe in greater and lower levels of life, and I'm trying to ascend to greater levels of life, which is why I do alchemy. But yeah, that's my take on the whole situation, why we only use a tiny fraction of our mind power. And that tiny fraction that we use, that 5 to 10%, I think most of that, well, pretty much all of it, is all tied up into supporting our perception of our 5 senses, and also the functionality of our physical bodies. So I guess that 5 to 10%, it appears as though it's safe, but it's really not. because the ego is greedy. Because when you, how shall I put it? When you insert, or should I say, when you believe in something, like a concept of yourself, and you begin to infuse your spiritual energy into that concept, you will have charted a course, a spiritual direction. So the spirit is, even now, if you've created an ego for yourself, an unconscious ego, your spirit is still infusing, gradually infusing more and more of itself into that unconscious ego. And nowadays, it's kind of easy to see that that's the case. If you see a whole lot of people walking around in zombified states, I know I do. I mean, it's getting pretty serious. We have to figure out a way to reverse it all, if possible. But yeah, more and more of the spiritual energy is still being infused into the ego. So that means that perception is gradually getting more and more faint. Now, when I say more and more faint, what I mean by that is more and more faint of the outside world reality. And it's becoming more and more prominent, more and more powerful within the inner mind, within the unconscious mind, the lower mind, the shadow mind. And that's easy to tell. I live in a city where the homeless population is growing by leaps and bounds, and I see a lot of these people, and I'm not judging them, but they've gone that path, a lot of them. And like you see them talking to people that ain't there and that kind of thing, but in their minds, those people are there because their perception is gradually being siphoned away from the outer to the inner area, the inner unconscious area, and that's what they're seeing. Like when you go to sleep at night and you wake and you go into a dream state, and all of your perception is in the inner part of your mind, the unconscious part of your mind, while you're dreaming. The dream is real. Well, they're up and at 'em, you know, physically awake, but because of this phenomena that I'm talking about, they are asleep. Their perception, more so than not, is down under, as opposed to being up above. Yeah, it's kind of strange that can happen to people. But the key to fixing it, as you already know, you probably already figured it out, is to raise your conscious vibration. And this is why I practice alchemy. Alchemy is a good way to raise your conscious vibration. And the more you raise your vibration, the more of that mind power comes back to where it belongs, at your conscious disposal, so you can manifest that life, that good life, and start proving to yourself that your mind is infinitely powerful. I mean, think about it. Even when you go to sleep in a dream and you have a dream, your mind virtually recreates the entire universe. You're dreaming. Your mind's projecting the whole universe in your dream. You don't know it. You don't know you're in a dream. You don't know it's a universe that you created. But everything's solid. You can feel, you can do everything with the five senses. interact with people in any kind of way. And man, if you become lucid in one of those dreams, you become like a god in total control. Now imagine if all that power was at your disposal by reclaiming that power back from the ego. And all that power, just like in a lucid dream, you could have in this waking reality. In theory, you could be like a god in this waking reality. In theory. I say in theory because I'm working on trying to prove it, and I think you should too. But anyway, that's my take on why we only use a certain amount of mind power. A very measly amount at that. We're stingy with our own mind powers. It don't make sense. But again, hope you're well as can be. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the channel. And God bless.